Okay, so what we're going to do is just in one of these last videos for flathead fishing, I'm just going to tie this up pretty sort of simple jig. How are we going to do this? What I might do is, what you find is we've been seeing that those blokes have been catching flathead with the manta shrimp inside them, that sort of thing. They love prawns, and people sort of say the moon, it's the tides, it's got nothing to do with light and that sort of thing. But what happens is when the prawns leave the river, they actually wait for the new moon, the dark side, the dark moon, and on and outgoing, and they will leave at that point, on and outgoing at night time, and this is probably makes them the least visible, although we have a lot of synthetic light along the river, and this is where they become vulnerable again. And fish, bigger predators, can aggregate around light, probably more so in around the new moon than say the full moon, because they of the synthetic light. So prawns throughout the year they bury themselves in the mud, and they'll leave with some summer rains, and but though they tend to go on the outgoing in the dark moon, and they just float down. They keep minimal movement because they don't want vibration. We notice that some of the lures we've got put out vibration, and this really attracts the flathead as well. So you don't want to be a prawn flicking in the current if you can help it. And their eyes, when you're fishing for prawns, for king prawns, you've got your light going out the front. I was saying before that Dad used to use a Primus lamp, and today they've got LED underwater lamps you can actually stick underwater, which are a lot more effective. But what happens is when those king prawns are coming down the river, departing on the darker moon, summer rains, bit of dirty water, their eyes actually glow a red colour when they're coming down, and that's I believe that's to do with the guanine in the eyes. Similar with other species which like mulloway, etc., that will feed in sort of water with tannin in it as well, and barramundi, they have their eyes are sort of red, but they also go a goldy colour as well. Same with mulloway, depends on how much light is hitting their eyes, and so they will, they have a reddy goldy eye. So this jig here, normally if I'm tying a fly or something, I'll put gold bead chain in there to represent gold eyes. But you know what? Flathead are probably not as finicky than some of the other species. And like I said before, if you've got this bigger head, trying to get distance, it'll hit the sand or the mud, it'll flick up, and this attracts fish as well, as per the prior video. So I'm just going to tie this fly here. I'm hoping this is going to work out, because normally I'll just have a big spool I have here, but I can't find my big spool of gold. So I'm just going to tie this like this with a body of, as you can see, I've just sort of started off loose. So those, even though a lot of people will say it's just the tide, it's not, full moon, new moon, just big tides, when they stop, when they're slowing down, fish will, fish tend to feed, that sort of thing. But, I think sometimes, if the prawns are massive prey for mulloway and other species. And so if these prawns are leaving on the new moon with an outgoing tide at that time of the year, then predators will be around to feed on them. And mulloway love prawns. Everything loves prawns. So I've got this hook facing up. This is standard for a jig, but if I'm tying a fly, quite often I get the hook to point up as well because it won't catch on rocks, etc. And you can set up with a fly, you can set up a dumbbells underneath or the bead chain. Bead chain's sort of not as heavy, so you tend to get more swimming with the bead chain. But Peter Pakula did a study years ago trolling lures, and they found the best hookup rate they had with marlin and sailfish and that sort of thing was actually having the hook straight up. So they work on trying to get that to happen when they're trolling with the boats. So I always try to follow that principle whenever I'm trying to tie jigs, etc. There's another fly actually called a bendy back. And that's where you bend the hook. If you have a look on the net, you'll find that. And a bendy back sort of tends to make the fly sit with the hook up, especially if you're only using bead chain. So what I've done is brought this through. I don't know whether I'll keep going with the same one. Normally I bulk it out a bit more, but I don't think I'm going to have to. Right, so what you can see is... what I'm using here is a bit of nylon tie-on. And these don't have to be complex. I'm doing a bit of talk. I'm talking and chewing gum here. So things are not going to be as swish as when you're sitting there just focused on actually tying these things. A bit more to think about, that sort of thing. So what I'm doing here is just doing a couple of half hitches and... might just put a bit of this, as mentioned in prior videos, is I've got this here, which is this bit of UV knot sense or UV knot. There's a bunch of different companies that make this stuff. That's just the first one that I picked up. And then you've got this UV light, which just sets off the UV glue. I might put a bit more on that because what that will do is bulk out that gold there. Right, so I did hear some people saying, what tides do I fish when I do this? You know what? Flathead fishing are great. They gentlemen's hours. There is so many variables to fishing, and if the sun's up high, that sort of thing, then what I do is I'll tend to, I'll cast deeper into those drop-offs in the river. I wish I had my little stick thing. I think that bit of stuff's going to sag on me, but so I'll cast to the drop-offs in daytimes. That's sort of going off now already. I'll go to the deeper drop-offs when the sun's quite high, and but I've been very lucky. I've been working down at Fremantle, so what's been happening is I finish work and I'll just go for an hour after I finish work, maybe if I'm lucky an hour and a half, and just go and fish. And it doesn't matter what time you go and fishing. I'm getting flathead all through the day, and the tides, tides play a bit of a factor there, and moon. I think flathead are not as much influenced, but certain certain moons are going to slow them down a bit, and what I'm finding is that I often finish work about start at 6, finish at 3, so I don't get to fish the mornings like some people, etc. But I'm fishing 3, and then around 4 I'm getting a few fish. But I've been going to other places, and I've been there right in the middle of the day. I'm getting fish right through that at lunchtime. So fish don't, as a general rule, you'll hear people say, oh, the flathead will be caught on the tide, change of the tide, or the outgoing's really good. But I always find with flathead and other species is that, quite often for other species, the incoming will be a good time for them to feed. I find they're feeding on the incoming. But what I find even with flathead is one area they'll be feeding, they might feed on a bit of an outgoing, and then you shift to another area and they're only feeding on the incoming. So they change habits, and this might be a bend in the river, anything like that, which will impact. They might shift to those areas. I mean, if there's bait there, that's a good sign. Where there's bait, there's going to be flathead moving in to actually ambush all those bait fish. So that's a great thing too. So also in the daytime, what happens is if I've got the sun coming down and I've got shadows that are casting onto the river, I find a lot of fish will feed around those shadows as well, because it enables them to sit in a dark space away from bird predators, that sort of thing. And it's in the darkness, and that gives them a bit more camouflage. And so I'm finding, I find what happens is that predators will sit in those shadows in the tree. They'll move up in a shallower water in the later of the afternoon, sit in those shadows, and then you'll be fishing around and you'll get smashed. I mean, 2 days ago, I was under a bridge, and so what I was doing is casting into the shadow of the bridge and winding back, and I was getting flathead in that, in that shadow of the bridge, whereas outside of that, I wasn't getting anything. But the next day is completely different. The flathead aren't there the next day; they're over in the sun. So, if you've got shadows, that sort of thing, have a crack in the shadows as well. So, moving on, flaties feed at night. I mean, a lot of us tend to think that flaties are sort of, we'll fish daytime for flaties. A lot of people are fishing daytime, but flaties are out at night as well, big time. And if you can put something that's a little bit glow on them, they'll hit them. I remember being down at Bustleton, and I think we had a bit of a discussion about bioluminescence in one of the other videos. But what happened is I was down at Busso, and there was herring there, and I've caught these herring, and they've got the bioluminescence in the back of their eyes, which I hadn't seen before, and that was at night time. So they actually had these bioluminescence dots near their eyes, and what they were doing is they're using the bioluminescence like little headlamps, and they're reflecting the light out of their eyes to actually have night vision. It was, I hadn't seen that before, so that freaked me out when I saw that years ago. So in seeing that bioluminescence in herring and in other species in the other videos, we're just talking about the river and going prawning with Dad, and the crabs and the prawns and other species, garfish, all sorts of things were coming down, and it's a slightly different scenario because they've got the bubbles. They've got bubbles. They aggregate these bubbles, and when they hit the UV, these bubbles are sort of, they light up when they're agitated. Whereas the herring, how they accumulate that bioluminescence in those like ducts around their eyes, I'm not entirely sure. I know some species are they eat dinoflagellates, and this enables them to actually have these different colours. I think squid, all those other species, they have photophores. It's a big subject. So I'll just keep moving here so we can finish this simple jig for you. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I'm just lining this up. And as always, less is more, you know. It's easy to get caught up, you know, and bunch stuff up, but you don't really need to. You don't need a lot. This stuff here, I got this out of you know, like one of those bait shops. I was in the UK, and I'd met my father-in-law for the first time, sort of thing, and he's gone, "Oh, does he like football?" And my wife says, "Oh, he's not really a big fan of football, but he wants to go to the bead shop, to the sewing shop, Dad." that sort of lit him up, you know. So I got this from a sewing shop. There's all these other things, you know. Guys put me on to these guys that are like the gurus at fly fishing stuff. This is like teddy bear. This has got variegation in it. There's all sorts of stuff you can get. You don't have to go to a fly shop, although the fly shops have a lot of stuff that's very specific, and it's good. Right, so I think here's another one. This is slightly shorter, but these are all patches for making teddy bears, that sort of thing. And this is the other stuff that I put on. This is gold shimmer flash. That's the stuff I wrapped on the body. And then I've got some gold micro flash here, sort of thing, that I might just tie on a little bit. What I find is a bit of shiny stuff works well at night as well. So if you're around bridges and things like that with a bit of light, a bit of flash fish, you know, makes a difference. So what we'll do is we'll just move on here. So I'll move that back off that head. Right, so I'm starting not tight, right? So when I'm wrapping, I start off soft, because if you start off too hard straight up, what it does is it spreads the fur, and we've had this discussion before, and I'll just join. All right. Okay. Move that there. Right, okay. Now I'm just doing half hitches. I still can't find my half hitchy thingy. I'll have to get another one. They're all, we're mid-renovation. We've got stuff everywhere. Right. Okay, so then I've just got a little bit of this. I'm just going to use this. I find rubber legs are really good, although if you're fishing the Swan and you're putting rubber legs on, the blow is smashing pretty quick, whereas this stuff is a bit more resilient, although not right. So this here might resemble anything. Feelers, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is just put this on the halfway mark. Right. And then just put that there. Oh man, how I was saying about not wrapping too tight to start off with. Right. What I'm going to do is just do that there. Right, so you don't want to wrap too tight straight up, because you don't want too much. You don't want to spread when you're tying. Right, so we'll do that, and then I'll do the usual, because hot orange is what they do is they use it for different reasons. It's a what they call it, a tractor colour, that sort of thing. But also, what you find is prawns actually have they have orange in the belly, and that's to do with eggs and all sorts of things. Fish are attracted to orange, so they just. I haven't got my glasses on, so I can't see that. Right, so I'll just wrap that on there. Right. Okay, so what's happening is when you're fishing, I read an excellent book by Ron Calcutt when I was a kid. Got it around here somewhere. That you know, he explains that fish don't go to the supermarket, and that's always sat with me all my life. And that is that, fish are not like us where they just go to the shop and they pick up their stuff. Everything they do is they analyze everything. They're looking at food and going, what's the percentage of success I'm going to have with this feed? So, is it worth chasing? Is it big enough? Is it wounded? How much energy am I going to achieve? And it seems pretty crazy, but that's what they're doing. And they, so they're always looking. And I've, read about Taylor where they're eating smaller prey and vomiting that up to go and eat a bigger, like a big garfish, that sort of thing. And so fish, when sometimes bigger baits are a better thing. Sometimes fish are just locked onto smaller baits, so that's all they will feed on. But be mindful of this. Fish are always looking at ways. We're talking about the shadows. They're setting themselves up to go and ambush, and that the predators convert to low light vision before the bait fish do. In the twilight, early morning and evening, and that gives them the advantage of hitting bait fish. So they're it gives them an advantage. So when you're fishing and you're looking at you're trying to chase those flathead and flounder, have a think about where they might sit, and obviously in the past I've had success in shadows in the later of the afternoon, etc. So I've seen the bridge shadow and I'm having a cast there and caught 2 fish in quick succession at that point in the afternoon where the fish had been sitting in the darkness and waiting to ambush prey, which had come out of the light. They don't, the bait fish and a lot of other things, they have to adapt their eyesight to the light. And it's a bit like you and me. We're in a bright light and we go, out to the dark, etc. And we're a bit blinded by like that. And that's what the predators are taking advantage of. I've just picked up this here where I've got this knot, and we had a chat about the double to the leader with game fishing, etc. And something I didn't point out is that the great thing with knots, we tie braid to mono leaders. We have quite a fine. We don't tie doubles. A lot of the time we're tying a single straight to a leader. But what you have is, like when you have this double, is you have a lot of hinging, and when you're casting, you have a lot of bruising when it's coming out of the eyelets. So a double really helps with that. And also we have the 100% knot, 2 strands going into the single 80 to 90% knot. So what that means is basically we've got double strands going into there, which is, basically converts an 80% knot into a 100% knot because you've got 2 knots in. But what it does also is, like I was saying, you get this bit of hinging with knots. So having this set up enables you less chance of if you're in a long fight, you're getting this moving all the time, then eventually the friction will combust that knot. So having these double strands, also having like this was the Bimini twist, that's 100% knot. Now when some of the time I'm tying braid to mono, when in the shop we'd have people sending in reels for services, etc. One came in from Christmas Island and it had an Albright tied to mono, but it also had a chain knot up it. And I thought that's brilliant, because what happens is with the chain knot going up there, what you can do also is finish it with a risotto. We spoke about Jim risotto before. Risotto knot is 100%. So what happens is if you've got the braid in a chain knot where you've got a situation where you think you might have a fight of considerable duration, when you've got that chain knot, that point where the braid comes into the knot to the mono or the carbon leader, that helps when if you've got that hinging and you've just got normal and bruising going through the thing, that chain knot can be the difference between, it lasting the fight out and catching a fish and not catching a fish. Some of the boys that I've been very fortunate to fish with and learned a lot off, they'll fish micro swivels. They'll tie their braid to a micro swivel and then that to their leader, and they'll fish the micro swivel out the tip with, say, 700, 800, sometimes 900 if they're tall. They're using quite long spin sticks for tailor, that sort of thing. And I use the long one now for flathead as well, because I'm trying to get distance, and I've learnt off them as well. And so don't be scared if you're not comfortable with tying braid to mono or carbon. Use a micro swivel and then have, say, your jig head with your micro swivel outside the tip and cast it, and you'll get more distance. This is why these guys that are hardcore fishers that we don't see, they're very secretive, but they're fishing 3 and 4 times a week. They're getting a bit older now, so they're starting to slow up a bit, but they're fishing the swivel outside the tip instead of using a double uni or anything like that for tailor, that sort of thing. So you can do that with flathead as well. If you're not comfortable with tying braid to mono, just buy some micro swivels and tie your braid to the micro swivel, then have your leader. It's not really going to impact lures like this much. And sometimes it's not bad with even your hard bodies, because it provides a little bit of forward weight, ever so little, and keeps that lure down. So don't, if you especially if you're starting out, try the braid and tie that to a micro swivel, and then have your mono or your carbon leader off of that. And I think that's about it now. So, thanks very much for listening. Bye.